You wouldn't like me when I'm angry because I always back up my rage with facts and documented sources. The Credible Hulk with his take on the principle of truth cock. Thought we'd start it off with a bit of a chuckle today because it's going to get ugly. We'll follow that with the obligatory Orwell quote to get things started. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. We talked about that a little bit last week with regard to the Ministry of Truth and their new dispatch, that all of these videos that we've seen of our staggering cadaver in chief losing his way, not being able to figure out how to get off a stage, shaking hands with invisible people, having to be led off stage after freezing up. Yes, ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears. These are all, and I quote, deep fakes, which Karine John Identity Hire later backed off to cheap fakes. Deep fakes being another thing entirely. We touched on it, we moved on it, but this week we're going to get into a little more of how that spreads through and covers on all levels. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears telling you that this beatific smile on this beautiful 12-year-old girl who was victimized by two illegal migrants from Venezuela, ones who had been arrested, and turned loose by the feds only 2 weeks earlier in Houston, Texas this week. This lovely and completely innocent 12-year-old girl was abducted, taken under a bridge, raped, and murdered by two Venezuelan savages. Now, there are people out there that would take issue with me using the word savages. In fact, when I posted on Facebook, they gave me the chance to take it down. This matches things that have previously been addressed as hate speech. Are you sure you want to post? Clearly, the answer was yes. It's the least I could do for the spirit of this young girl and her families, and I wish that this were an isolated incident. And I wish that these six were just isolated incidents. Rachel Moore and Molly Tibbetts, Elizabeth Medina, Kate Steinle, Sarah Root, Laken Riley, whose names we've all heard. This is no less at this point than a daily occurrence. That's right. If you're following anything but the mainstream press, you know the prevalence and ubiquity, that's my college word. I've got like three of those. You know the prevalence and ubiquity of these incidents. It literally is at this point a daily occurrence. But if you follow MSNBC or NPR or CNN or even Fox, you wouldn't get a full idea. You wouldn't get a full spectrum analysis of the enormity of this problem. And speaking of MSNBC, the problem isn't that the border remains wide open. The problem isn't that a steady stream of single military-aged men, an abhorrent percentage of which are convicted violent felons in their own country, and those without exception who are culturally incompatible with the United States. The problem isn't that they are raping and killing American women and children. No, the problem is the terminology. We could refer back to Orwell and NewSpeak, but we've already done it to death, so I'll take a pass on it this week and we'll continue on. These two MSNBC news whores, when the gentleman in the middle brought up this horrible incident involving this innocent 12-year-old girl in Houston, Texas, referred to them as illegals. At which point, the news whores in question felt morally obligated to correct his terminology. That's right. The problem isn't the raping and killing of a 12-year-old girl. The problem is that they were referring to the perpetrators as illegals rather than undocumented. My response in the moment would have been, okay, then, fair enough. We'll call them undocumented predatory miscreant scumbags. But then we run into the problem of calling them predatory miscreant scumbags because, after all, they're just like us and they're just coming here for a better life. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. We can all see it, and we can all see the inconsistencies, but we are told, what did they say about it? It was the party's what? Final, most essential command. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Stop Asian hate, they tell us. Stop Asian hate when they are trying to carry the narrative about the quite true fact that there is an epidemic of violence and hate crimes being perpetrated against Asians in this country. The problem comes in when people used their own eyes and ears, and of course, the number one hate crime, recognition of the people who were actually committing the hate crimes against Asians. As it turns out, it was almost without exception African American, young, and male. This man in question is a Los Angeles firefighter. He was approached by a black coworker and beaten within an inch of his life with the metal implement you see on the right side of the frame. Seems obvious enough that it was a hate crime, but ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. The problem isn't that there was a hate crime committed. The problem is that that hate crime in question didn't go with the narrative. And so the Los Angeles Police Department pressured him not to press charges against this African American gentleman, who, by the way, was also a firefighter. Diversity hire? I leave that for you. But regardless, he was also a Los Angeles firefighter, Los Angeles Fire Department firefighter, a co-worker of this Asian man. And the fire department pressed him not to press charges. When the Asian man did what he damn well should have done and pressed charges anyway, guess who lost their job? And guess who ultimately was not prosecuted at all, let alone with a hate crimes modifier? You can do the math and you can see the pattern, and you realize that this isn't merely anecdotal with a simple, cursory 9-second Google search of the numerical and empirical evidence in question. But what was the party's final, most essential command? Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. We give you the narrative, an epidemic of anti-Asian hate crimes, and we casually won't mention who's perpetrating them. We give you the narrative. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Steve Bannon, not everybody's bag of donuts, not even my cup of tea. I disagree with Bannon vehemently on any number of things. He ignored a congressional subpoena and was cited with contempt of Congress. He was free on bail. What? They required bail? That couldn't have been in a blue city. Oh, wait, he's a white guy. Yeah, he was out on bail pending the appeals process. That had gone on as the state of affairs for months, and nobody decided to press it until someone at the Justice Department, Merrick Garland's Justice Department, said, wow, he could be an important voice in the 6 months until the elections, and we've got to pull him off the street. So this week, Bannon was arrested and Bannon was jailed. At the behest of this man, who currently, ironically enough, is being cited for contempt of Congress, held in contempt for refusing a congressional subpoena. Wait a minute, like this guy? Yeah, just like that guy. He refused a congressional subpoena. What was the subject matter of the subpoena? The actual recordings of the written transcript of the investigation into Joe Biden and his unsecured documents. The transcript has already been released, so we're way past executive privilege. We wanted to hear the audio tapes, but for whatever reason, and I'm sure it couldn't be the fact that hearing him on audio tape, stuttering and stammering like a cadaver wouldn't paint a negative opinion in the eyes of the potential electorate. Garland is refusing to release, so he has been cited with contempt of Congress. Those tapes have been subpoenaed. He is refusing to honor them. How convenient that it is Merrick Garland's Justice Department that is refusing to carry forth the warrant. But there's no double standard here, boys and girls. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. The party will give you the narrative, and you are expected, no, required, to follow along. This miscreant maggot was a denizen of Portland, Oregon. The frame that you see here was a single one taken out of the video. Someone had set him up. This sexual predator, this deviant, this animal, this maggot was on that particular plaza, which I've walked myself. It's one of the few remaining beautiful parts of that once great city of Portland, Oregon. He was there to meet a 14-year-old girl for sexual purposes. Now, obviously, there was no 14-year-old girl, and the only sexual purposes was he's about to get screwed because he got set up. In the middle of the man who had set him up approaching him and accosting him, "What are you doing here? Why have you been here with the intent of meeting with a 14-year-old girl for sexual purposes?" In the middle of this, some Pollyanna Stasi Karen walked right up into the middle of the exchange and accosted who? The man with the camera. That's right. She was there to ensure that this brown person wasn't being harassed. And I'm quoting from the video. You can find it on Twitter or any other social media platform. There we have the entirety of the problem perfectly encapsulated. He's culturally incompatible. He's a predatory miscreant maggot. And yet, Pollyanna Karens still want to make sure that his rights aren't violated. Harm reduction, I think they call it, or some such buzzword, but ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. There's no problem here, and it's certainly not systemic. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears when we take a look at this Muslim immigrant in London tearing the cross down off the top of a church. Would be bad enough if this were an isolated incident, but as we're going to address later in the program, there are literally hundreds of these going on in every Western nation that has allowed this influx of savages. It has become epidemic. It's right there in front of your face, but reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears because, after all, diversity is our strength, our borders are secure. You don't want to be a bigot. The party's final, most essential command. Sometimes they get a little more intricate. They don't just tell you to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears, reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. They actually give you teaching aids to that end. This was a news graphic from 1988. In this news graphic, 65% of America, 65% was at 90 degrees or above. It was presented clearly, concisely, with easily discernible color codes to make the graph obvious. 1988, on this date, 65% of the United States was 90 degrees or above. This same date, in 2024, you would look at that and think that the same percentage of the nation were on fire. But no, it wasn't the George Floyd riots again. This was the same date in 2024. If you looked at that graphic, well, you would have the knee-jerk reaction that you're supposed to. There's only one problem with that. They changed the color code, and on the same date in 2024, only 17% of the continental United States was under heat advisories at 90 degrees or above. 1988, 67%. 2024, our record heat wave, our end of the world, Chicken Little sky is falling, climate change moment, 17%. Once more, for those in the back, the MSNBC viewers, the NPR affiliates, and the functionally retarded, but I repeat myself, 17% is this. 65% is this. 65%, 17%. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears, and we're going to give you a little teaching aid to aid you to that end. On the exact same day, this was what the news whores had to present. Now, this came from a meme that was presented. The numbers are accurate. Take a look at the numbers in 2017 and in 2022. Cooler in 2022, but it's presented in red colors to make it seem like it's a lot more treacherous, to make it seem like the sky is falling and the climate is changing and it's all our fault and we're all going to die in 12 years. Forsooth, I say, forsooth. We posted this to both the personal page and the fan page, and you know what it got? Fact checked. Not because the numbers were inaccurate, not because the point it made was inaccurate, to wit, the fact that the numbers are lower, but they're being presented in red to scare people, but because gradual trends, fact check, subject matter experts, blah, blah, yada, yada. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. The party will tell you what you need to know. This doctor from Texas Children's Hospital is now facing over a decade in prison. Why? Because he blew the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital, continuing their program of, and I will be unequivocal about this, and this is a hill that I'm willing to die on, the surgical mutilation of children. Now, according to the party, that's gender affirming healthcare. And the Texas Children's Hospital swore up and down publicly that they had ceased all such operations. But this doctor chose not to reject the evidence of his own eyes and ears. He knew that they were lying, and he knew that those procedures continued. So he did what any person of conscience would do. He blew the whistle on a lie that involved, again, the surgical mutilation of children. So, of course, the DOJ, this guy's boys, they swept in with the full force of law enforcement and cracked down not only on the now illegal in the state of Texas activity of these mutilation procedures, but arrested all of the doctors involved and all of the surgeons and all the people that covered it up. Oh, no, wait, that's not what happened. They arrested this doctor. They filed charges against him. They tried to trip him up in a public interview. His wife insisted that he not speak to them without an attorney, and that is the only thing that saved his ass from being in an even deeper hole. But ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears, boys and girls. The Department of Justice has not been weaponized to advocate for a political or a social or a moral agenda of any kind. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. It's the party's final, most essential command, after all. And after all, at the end of the day, the party's doing it for our own good. We need to be more compassionate, we are told. Compassion is what we are lacking. Murray Rothbard had a word on that. It is easy to be conspicuously compassionate if others are being forced to pay the cost. Now, when Rothbard penned this quote, he was referring to a financial cost. He was referring to taxation for those compassionate purposes, those downtrodden, marginalized people. And it's easy to be compassionate if you are forcing through tax policy others to pay the cost. But there's a much higher cost being paid now. The quote is still accurate. It is easy to be conspicuously compassionate in the way of virtue signaling if others are being forced to pay the cost. Unfortunately, those costs now are not merely financial. They are still financial, but they are not merely financial. Those costs now are the very life force of our culture. That cost now is the innocence of children. That cost now, ultimately, if their agenda is fulfilled, will be the death of Western civilization and all things right and holy that it has brought to the world. So while some of us are out there being conspicuously compassionate and thumping their chests about what wonderful, virtuous people they are, you need to take into account that others are being forced to pay the cost. And if you are not willing to look that cost in the eye, the gravity of it, the enormity of it, the human suffering and lives that are at stake because of it, you have no right to an opinion. Some of us are willing to die on that hill. Don't make us return the courtesy of forcing you to die on that same hill. I urge you, I implore you, I importune you, I entreat you to step back from the brink. You know not the end result of what you push for. but you are about to receive a very hard education in just how committed the rest of us are to that principle. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. Because I really, really like this one, and I'm going to be really sad when this gig ends in a couple of weeks. For you docs, happy Antifa maggots out there. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to stretch open that maw by whatever means necessary and forcibly choke you with an overwhelming dose of swollen, turgid truth cock. Once again, boys, with a black latex glove and a fistful of truth, it is time for the Sunday sermon. I'm glad y'all made it. Oh yeah, that's the energy in the house tonight. I'm trying to keep the hostility to a minimum, but the energy pegged up here. Let's see who else is in for it. Who's got the fire? Everybody in for the drum roll. Once again, kicking off with that bumper music from the one and only Red Desert Gut Stomping Rock and Roll Band from the smoldering embers, ruins, and craters of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. I'm a little over the top this week, so we're going to get it out in measured doses. Hopefully you guys just hang right with me. I know that I'm preaching largely to the choir, but we're about to find out who's on board. Let me see who we got. Brother Roman and, of course, the lovely Miss Carrie checking in early. Mr. Bill Wade, happy to see you on board. Brother Bill, my brother in Christ, and my blood brother who I love like my own flesh and blood. Always good to see you turn out. The original sinner sister herself, the divine Miss M. No, it's the divine Miss Emmy, the OG sinner sister. Happy you made it out, mama. Look at that. The lovely Miss Charlie has decided to join us. I'm wondering how long she's going to last with some of the subject matter, but let's all give her a lot of encouragement because I do thank her for the support. Everybody knows Miss Charlie, and if you don't, you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, right? Sorry about your phone luck. Right on. So I'll just let her and Miss M engage in that little dialogue. Who else we got? Joel Allen Jackson, the madman of the Midwest. Do you live by the river? The Ohio River, sir? Yes. I went down that river once when I was a child. Sorry, man. Colonel Kurt's moment. You knew we weren't going to get out without it. Sorry for the late start. Deacon Mark on the porch with the lovely Miss Ida with an inebriant of choice in hand and hopefully a cigar or cigarette for the other party involved. Happy to see both y'all. By the way, Deacon Mark has his own Substack out now. As it turns out, unbeknownst to the rest of us, we have a plethora, that's my other college word. I got like 3 of those. Anyway, we got a plethora of skilled writers with various subject matter expertise among our little brotherhood in Christ. It turns out that Deacon Mark has been keeping a secret, and that secret is he's a skilled writer with a good voice, and we are going to encourage that gift. You guys check him out on Substack. You guys already know who else is on Substack. Brother Sonny's over there. Megan is over there. Let me see who else we got. Oh, yeah, the Rev's got a Substack. Everybody who's anybody is over on Substack now, man. And we got a lot of really, really good writers, gifted speakers in this little group, man. And I'm happy to see all of these gifts coming to fruition. Everything for the kingdom, omnia ad regnum, every gift glorifying the boss man and the carpenter. It's a beautiful thing to see. Speaking of the boss man and the carpenter, brother Doug Turtle Cats, good to see you, brother. I'm glad you finally made it back out. Hey, man, I appreciate you more than you know, man. Dude, we got to do the check-ins, you know what I mean? Making sure you're out there. We're all going through it, but we're going through it together, and we are going through it with the strength of the carpenter behind us, man. And I've kept you in my prayers, and I hope everything is nice and strong and as stable as it can possibly be under the circumstances. Brother Doug, God bless you, man. I'm glad you made it out. Let's see who else we got. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. The mighty, mighty Bonsai Bonsa. It has been a minute. Speaking of my respected brothers in Christ, our members of the brotherhood, our people who are out there soldiering on in the face of that struggle and in the face of the struggle that's coming. Bone, I am so glad. I remember a long time ago you told me that, and this is before we'd even seen each other in probably 10 years at that point, that you told me, hey man, me being on Facebook was the only reason that you stayed on. Whatever it was, I'm glad that you stayed, man, because the feeling is quite reciprocal, bro. I see those parts of you out there. You were dropping some truth bombs. You were choking them with the truth cock. It is inspirational, brother. Love to see it. And of course, where would we be without the mighty, mighty Stone, the man they call Stone, on board here? Speak that truth. You got it, brother. You got it. You expect nothing less. I'm delivering nothing less. Brother Jake from Schwemsylvania, man. I did get your memo, and I did. And Sonny is here, and he is. Yeah, yes, it is getting hot in here, brother Sonny. I'm glad you made it out, man. Look at this. We got the usual suspects and then some on board, and everybody's on board early, even though I'm running a little bit late. So maybe I facilitated it. I'm not sure. But Jake, Sonny saw the memo. I saw the memo. I like what you got going on down there, and we will be talking at length with the developments you got going on with that property. Sonny, I know you got the memo. Brother Jake is my brother in Christ. He's a devoted man of faith. He's a solid intellect, and he's like a lot of people would say about me. He's exactly our kind of asshole. Definitely an asshole, but he's our kind of asshole. And anyway, man, he just purchased a nice little plot of land, and he's putting things, together on that front. So it may be another place that we have for people to get some training in down in the Lone Star State. Turns out I may be spending some time down there, but I'm not going to go into any detail about that. We'll see what's up. Crank it. You like that, brother. Speaking of Texas, brother Phil Lewis, glad you made it out, man. Long and brother, denizens of the Pacific Northwest, brother Tom Hollyby on board, and you made the sermon, brother, with that post that you had earlier. Let me see, what we got that? I'm with it, nothing written. All right, got it. We got David on board. My goodness, man, look at this turnout. Yes, exactly, brother, exactly. That's what we were talking about. And I'll let you guys carry on that conversation, man. One day, sooner than later, I'm going to make sure that you guys are able to make each other's acquaintance, man. Schwemsylvania, you got it, brother. That's it, man. Schwemsylvania. Brother Jake and I go way back, man. I got to tell you, it's what's really fulfilling and what's really kind of an honor for me. I'm going to go ahead and fade the bumper music out and get on with the program here. What's really fulfilling for me, whether it's with Jake or with brother Ryan, or even with Roman, who's known me for all the days. Roman wasn't really involved with those criminal enterprises back in the day, but he knew me when I was going through that. Um, he's seen me at my lowest, but a lot of these folks, man, a lot of these folks who are on board, who are part of the Reverends Rangers and the Prophets of Doom, all my OGs who were on board for the sermon, met me back in the day where we were all some really rough customers doing some really unsavory stuff with our lives, and with the exception of brother Ryan is not of the faith, right? But he is of the virtue, and he is of the moral code and the ethics. We were all festering, pardon the language, we were all festering shit sores of human beings back in the day, doing some very unsavory stuff. And without exception, those people who are still here from back in those days have turned their lives around. Some of us are walking in faith where we did not before. But even those of us who do not share the faith share the strength, and they share the virtue. Ryan does not share my faith, but he is walking the straight and narrow. He is out there being an incredible father to his son Chase, man. And I've watched the struggles of these men going through it. I watched Jake, when Jake and I lost contact for a while when he was going through his stuff. And I went my own way for a while, and anything I could get my vein around, and went through some really, really dark times of my life. Ryan had his trials from back in the day, was incarcerated, went through all of that, and came out of the penitentiary gates with a new lease on life. And I watched him as he went through. I watched him as he went through those struggles of trying to to even be allowed, right? To even be allowed to be the father to his son that he always wanted to be. I watched the effort, and I had a similar experience back in the day with my own daughter. So I had some tangential connection with the struggle it is to be completely locked out of your child's life by the other parent and outside parties who have nothing to do with you, and to go through that struggle. And I remember watching Ryan go through that struggle, and giving him my word, man. Giving him my word. It's like, brother, it will ultimately come together. It'll take time. It will not be easy. And lesser men would have given up. Lesser men would have walked away from the process. Lesser men would have gotten bogged down in their own suffering and their own struggle, their own iniquities and ways of coping. He didn't do that. He kept his eyes on the prize because he knew that that bond with his son was going to be worth it, and he weathered every single one of those struggles. And now he has his son, and he is able to be the father that I have always seen in him wanting to be. He is able to be that now. Jake is able to be the family man and the father that he has always, that it's been hit or miss when he's going through his struggles, but he kept his eyes on it. You know, now that my spirit has been renewed, now that I am walking into faith, now that I am able to touch people and reach people, and I'm able to put some of the machinations of the deceiver behind me. I don't know, guys, if you mentioned it, I am actually looking at. And again, this is not to puff my own pecker, and what an ironic choice of words for what I'm about to tell you. I'm at 10 weeks porn free. 10 weeks porn free, right? Um, Now that's nothing compared to 27 years without a needle in my vein, right? I'm saying all that to where are you going with this? But I tell you where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is, and you would see a meme that I posted to the personal page, and I believe also to the fan page earlier, about what God can do, what God can do with troubled men, right? And the thing is, God, boss man don't even need you to be part of the faith. Boss man don't need you to be part of the faith, because his love for you is going to transcend that. You might not be walking in the faith, you might not be walking in the light, but you are walking in the desire to legitimately better the life of someone like your son, right? He can take troubled men. I mean, I always come back to Saul of Tarsus, mass murderer by any reasonable definition. I turned him into the most prolific apostle in the history of the church, in the history of the faith. What do you think he can do with ordinary folks like us, whose sins are much less, much less? And I watch these men who have gone through it, whether they share the faith with me or not. I watch what God is able to do with their lives. I watch how God is able to take these broken men, these wretched sinners, and pull some good out of that. Divine plan, you bet your ass I believe in it. And that's a hill I'm willing to die on too. Anyway, man, I didn't mean to get off on a rant, but sometimes, man, sometimes the spirit just gets on me. And I pray for that every time before I go to air, man. I pray for it. It's like let me be open to it, man. Let it speak through me. Let whatever message I'm supposed to get out might not be coming from here or here. Might be coming from here. I'm just a vessel, bro. I'm just a vessel, and I strive to be that vessel. And the spirit was really speaking to me, man. And I just wanted to get that out. Not just how proud I am of every one of these men for how they've been able to wrest control of their lives from these outside circumstances, no matter what they may be, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever. They have been able to take what was just a broken down, demolished ruin and build something from it. And I have nothing but love and pride for my brothers who have been able to do that. But as a man of faith, I cannot help but be overwhelmed with the greatness of the boss man and the redemption that he can work through the carpenter to take these broken people, to take these broken spirits, these men who know the darkness, and to be able to to make them work as a vessel for light. It is just such a magnificent thing to be a part of, man. So basically, man, I love every one of my brothers, every one of y'all who have been through the darkness, and I send this out as a prayer, as a prayer and a hope for all you people who are out there who are in the darkness right now, right? Who are going through it. That, like you see on the back of everybody's t-shirt, win the battle that you don't tell anybody about. I see you, man. I see you, and bet your ass that the boss man and the carpenter see you. And I wish you nothing but their grace and their strength going forward. It is easy to tearing something down is the easiest thing in the world. That's why so many maggots gravitate to it. It is the path of least resistance. It is weakness, bro. It is weakness. And I would rather gravitate to people who are exhibiting the strength that it takes. The strength that it takes. Right? Let me give you a little word on faith. Right? Since we're here and I'm just trying to be that vessel, I'm going to give you a little word on faith. And Ryan and I were on the phone earlier and we were talking about that. It's like, look, man, I do embrace. Speaking of men of faith and brothers, Greg and Tommy, good to see you here, man. Um, I understand every problem that people have with the faith. I understand every problem that people have with the scriptures. I understand the inconsistencies that people are always pointing out. Yeah, well, this thing contradicts that thing, and this thing, and this person isn't living with you, dude. I understand all of that. One of the things that I really love about my Orthodox brothers, Sonny, Deacon Mark, talking to y'all, the really really cool thing that I see coming out of the Orthodox tradition is y'all don't have any issue. And Deacon Mark, you and I talked about this on the porch at your place. You don't have any issue looking at something like that and saying it's a mystery. It's a mystery, right? But just because you can't put an iron spike through something and get some tangible material relatable thing out of it to nail down, this thing being 100% consistent with it and across the board, you understand that it's a mystery. You understand that not only can you not explain it, but that you will never be able to explain it. But you take it on faith anyway. We take these things on faith. It is an article of faith. We carry forward with courage and with strength and with love and with light and with truth on faith, even though we don't have the answer, right? That is the essence of faith. And a lot of people say that that it's weakness and cowardice to just take these things on faith, man. But I'm here to tell you, want to know what the Rev says? I'll tell you what the Rev says about that. What the Rev says is it takes infinitely more courage to take those things on faith and to walk in truth and to walk in light. Hear me out, right? If I were to only base my life, and I did for the longest time, brother, for the longest time, and y'all knew me when, even though I wasn't theoretically in the darkness anymore, I was still radiating darkness because I was caught up in the things of the world. If I were to only be living my life based on what I could observe, what was tangible, what I could see, what I could hear, what I could experience, what I could examine and analyze, the state of the world right now, where would I be, man? Where would I be? Nothing but bleak, bro. Nothing but bleak. If that's all that I had was what I could observe, I would be one of these Neil Ross black pill MFers saying, why bother, dude? I would be Eeyore. Probably just fall off again anyway. It's where a lot of people are. And I'm not judging, man. I'm just making an observation on that. I understand. But the beauty of faith is that I know that's not the end, that I have got a confidence in something. And you know what? At the end of the day, if I'm wrong, cool. I won't find out until I'm no longer breathing. So what does it matter at that point anyway? Don't. And I know at least one of you out there, and you know who, is going, hey, man, it's awful close to Pascal's wager. Yeah, I hear you. And you can make a case for that too. But hear me out, man. It takes a lot more courage to look at everything where it's at right now and say, no, This is not the end. That is not what I am going to use as the guideline for my life. That is not what I'm going to base my behavior on. That's not what I'm going to base my moral compass on, because I have faith. I will carry on in faith. And if you think that doesn't take courage, I can't help you, bro. I can't help you. I can look at all the evidence in front of me that it is over. It is hopeless. The West is dead. Christianity is on its way out, and we're all going to be sliced down and cut down in our prime. And everybody with pale skin is going to be, is going to be Zimbabweed. That's the only time you're ever going to hear me use that word, because I'm trying to distinguish it from Rhodesia, which it will always be, by the way. But I digress. If all I was looking at was what I was surrounded by right now, where would I be? It takes a lot of courage to look at all these things being aligned against you and say, no, no. I take it on faith that I put my trust not in myself, not in these knuckles, not in this brain, not in the emotions that spin me up, not in the hormones that my body produces and the extras that I give myself. I put my trust in any of that. I look at the boss man and the carpenter, and they tell me they got a divine plan, and they tell me we win. And in spite of all evidence to the contrary, I choose to continue to walk in that faith. Y'all don't have to agree. Y'all can think less of me for choosing that path instead of getting buried in the darkness. You can belittle or berate or deride me all you want, but I'm going to continue to walk in faith. I'm going to continue to live the three, Stone. You hear me? I'm going to continue to be that signal to punch through the noise. And I don't care if it comes to nothing. I'm going to continue to hold that light and carry it through the darkness. And I don't care if it comes to nothing. I'm going to continue to preach and to push and to inspire strength over weakness. Though the whole world be aligned against me, if God is with us, who can be against us? Did y'all see these? Deus Vult. Brother. Oh, yeah, you see, I've got the F-bomb filter on today, right? Deus Vult, brother. God wills it. I trust that will, and I trust that plan. And thank you, Lord, for letting the Spirit speak through me and get that off my chest, man. It's just something that's been weighing on me. It's got nothing to do with anything, got nothing to do with any of the stuff that we're even going to be talking about on the program today, man. But it's been boiling up in me all morning. The whole time I was going through show prep, the whole time I was driving down to get my battle bottle filled with liquid enthusiasm, right? Because everything out in the desert is a provision run. It ain't no quick trip. But I'm gonna tell y'all something. That's been boiling up in me, and I thank the Lord for letting me just be open to that, letting the Spirit speak through me. That, let's see, Sonny, dedicated to all who walked on the thin, slippery edge of dark and cold grave. Its depths unseen, its loneliness immeasurable, its finality fearsome. Yet they emerged as those who not only taught deep science and fine art of violence in its many forms, they taught and guided others to be gentler, more forgiving, and caring to others, while becoming quite oppressive and brutally unforgiving towards themselves, pushing their standards higher. Their acceptance of mediocrity to extinction. Okay, it cut you off at some point, Sonny. It cut you off, but what? This was from the book being written, putting it out there for your review, right? Wow. Remember what I was saying? Wasn't I just saying that, y'all? These men are gifted in skill sets across the board. It's not just about this, or this, or this, or this. This. That was amazing. And if that is mine to review, you already got 2 thumbs up coming right out of the starting gate, brother. And I am sure that my brothers on this program, whether they are men of faith or otherwise, would certainly concur. More people study with an open heart as opposed to stubbornly trying to support and defend their baggage of misconceptions, we would learn a heck of a lot more. You're absolutely right, Jake. And that's across the full spectrum. We're going to get into that. We are going to get into that. David, I've always seen your light, Bart, even with the darkness around that inner light, or I never would have hung with you. Same as I'm sure Hal saw. Hey, yo, moment of silence for Hal. I miss Harold every day, man. I miss that man every day. But David, I appreciate you, man. I really do appreciate you. You were one of only a couple of people in that crowd, David. I remember you, and I remember Alan Hutton. You and Alan Hutton were two of maybe four who didn't just go, dude, he's off the deep end. Screw that guy, he's too far gone. And I appreciate that because it was certainly more confidence than I deserved at that point. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here for that and for letting me get that off my chest. And Sonny, thank you for opening yourself up like that and opening up an excerpt from the book, which I cannot wait to go through the editing process on. Um, that that was intense. And don't ever tell me that you're not in my league as a wordsmith, brother. I love that. Words mean things. It's one of the bullet points. We're going to get into it a little bit later. People play games with words, but people who are able to paint pictures with words. Its depths unseen, its loneliness immeasurable, its finality fearsome, yet they emerged as those who not only taught deep science and fine art of violence in its many forms, they taught and guided others to be gentler, more forgiving and caring, to others while becoming quite oppressively and brutally unforgiving toward themselves, pushing their standards higher. Brother, don't tell me you can't paint a picture. Don't tell me you can't paint a picture. I'm just glad we finally. I'm just glad we finally. I'm glad we finally got you to come out of your shell. The secular folks the secular folks can have their moments in their coming out parties in a much different context. But you finally coming out of the closet as a writer and a wordsmith is it's an honor and a privilege to be able to watch that process. Jake, you're a smart man and write very logically. I enjoy your talks and writings, brother, and I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your continued presence in my life. And I'm happy that we are meeting on even keel now in our respective walks in the faith, and that we have that among so many other things in common. Sister Emmy, warrior poets are a beautiful gift from God. We love you, Emmy. We love you, Lance. Made it out, man. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. So let's get on, man. I've been ranting and raving long enough. Let's jump off into the meat of this thing. Couple of sponsor shout outs really quick. Let's get this. First and foremost, always to Roman, who is one of my oldest and dearest friends, man. We go all the way back to 1988. Can you believe that? 1988. My goodness. Most of you can't even tell me who was president then. Most of you can't even tell me who was president then. Uh, years before some of y'all were even born. But that's how far me and Roman go back. And besides being one of my oldest and closest friends, he has been a devout supporter of me as an individual and of the program and of helping to get our word out. He is the top dog over the little thing called opiumtales.com, him and his lovely wife, Carrie. Um, and of course, Roxy and Allie and bevy of beautiful women over there, and all the new models that come through and cycle through so often I can't even keep track of them anymore. That's a good problem to have. If you just took up watercolors on your own volition, and women are paying you for the privilege of getting naked in front of you so you can paint their picture, and there's so many cycling through that you can't keep track of them, that's a pretty good problem to have. And if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can find him at Roman Riva on Twitter and Roman Reba on Amazon, From Dork to Pimp Daddy. It's his book that's out. You can get it via Kindle. It's available on Amazon, and it's basically a catalog of his journey through this whole process of going from Joe working class schlub to a dude that beautiful women pay for the privilege of getting naked in front of. I had that in a different context as a strip club DJ, but it was a very different thing. What I was doing was being a pimp with a jukebox. What Roman has actually done is actually an admirable pursuit, and he's done very well at it. And of course, let's not forget the testosterone-driven commentary, which is part of the Reverend Bart trifecta over at opiumtales.com. So please go check him out. And of course, where would I be without my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Telson over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. The long ship has hit the asphalt seas, he says. And it is out there rolling. You guys check them out on all the social media platforms to find out where they're going to show up. They will be bringing the heat on that barbecue. They are amazing. Only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. And both of those guys are dear friends of mine as well. You got Dusty, who's the pit master over there. You got his younger brother, Casey, who is a combat vet, a machine gunner, and he has a book out as well that you can find on Amazon called Freaks of a Feather. It is a desert war memoir that started off as a suicide note. I think that's the best, and that's by his own admission. That's in the header of the book. I think that's one of the best promotions that I could give as far as speaking to the authenticity of the words that he's putting down. It is a memoir that started off as a suicide note, but he's still breathing. He will take you on a walk in that inner landscape. He will take you on a walk through some of those combat zones. It is a dark place, brother. It is a dark place. And he articulates it and pulls you into the moment. And it's a magnificent thing. I love having so many gifted people in my circle of friends. People who are so gifted at being able to convey ideas, people who are gifted at being teachers in their own right, that is the greatest gift you can give anyone is knowledge, because it's the only gift that you can give someone that you're not actually giving anything away. If I've got two books and I give you one, I've only got one copy of that book. If I've got knowledge, I can give you that knowledge, and I can give him that knowledge. I can give him that knowledge, and I've still got the knowledge. And then you can give it to three people, and that guy can give it to six people. And those, you see, the nature of knowledge and wisdom and skills is a gift. It is literally the greatest gift that any of us have to offer. And if you feel like you don't have a skill to offer or knowledge to offer, one of two things: either you're not giving yourself enough credit, or you are objectively analyzing your life. And that's cool too. If you objectively analyze your life and go, man, I have nothing to offer. I have nothing to teach. I have no knowledge or wisdom to impart. Cool. Go out and get some. Go out and get some. The clock is ticking. The time is going to pass anyway. Time's going to pass anyway. You've got to make the decision of where you want to be on the other end of that time. Y'all tracking? Y'all feel me on that? Good. All right, cool. Even, what's that? Even smoking can show faith more than any other cooking. True story, actually. And I know the Texans are giving you a little amen and hallelujah on that one. So let's get on with it, guys. Let's jump on into the program. Of course, our first and most popular segment, the infamous Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Let me see if I can pull up the soundbite here. Might have a little bit of difficulty on the board. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yes. Yes. The thunderous roar of applause for Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Thank you all. Thank you. One day it's not going to come through, and I'm going to look like a retard just sitting here, like waving. I'm going to look like the president waving at imaginary people. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With staged applause, also like the president. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. What is the rabbit hole? Let me tell you about the rabbit hole for you guys that may not have been previously exposed to the rabbit hole. Ryan's Rabbit Hole started off as, it's the first additional segment of the program that we started doing, and we started doing that back in 2020, early days of the scamdemic. I was on a wind farm in Nebraska, learning crane skills. And Ryan and I, after not having seen each other for a number of years, we were rebonding, basically. And one of the things we bonded over is the fact that both of us are repositories of useless information. We're murdered to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with because we know a little something about all kinds of everything. And we bonded over that. So, what the rabbit hole started off of was just a little departure, and it's become a regular part of the program. And I've gotten all kinds of messages from people who are going, "Hey, man, thanks for doing a rabbit hole on that thing. I wasn't aware of that." And that really, man, now I'm like doing a deep dive on it. Every week we go a little off the beaten path. That's the purpose of the rabbit hole. We open up the rabbit hole. You decide how far you want to dive down that rabbit hole. Sometimes it dovetails with what the program is talking about. Sometimes it does not. We don't make it an issue. We go for historical figures that you might not be aware of, historical events that you may not have heard of before. We go for the esoteric. We go for the conspiratorial. We go for the, all of it. Historical, conspiratorial, esoteric, obscure, you name it. It's just something outside the beaten path of the average person, or sometimes a person that you may be aware of, but facets of that person that you might not previously have been aware of. And this week, it's going to be that kind of thing. It is going to be that kind of thing. I had originally planned on, and we talked about this, we'd originally planned on doing it like on the whole, but we're going to split this up into two parts. Two entertainment figures from the 1950s and 60s who were very prominent, but there were whole sides of them and their contribution not only to the entertainment industry, but to popular culture and indeed the cultural zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, college word. I got three of those. Rod Serling. Rod Serling. I will spell the last name, not like I should need to, but Serling. Rod Serling. Submitted for your approval. A man out of time. A man doing a podcast. Unbeknownst to him, sinister forces outside of his control are aligned against him. He's about to step into the Reverend Zone. Terrible Rod Serling impression. I don't care. I love Rod Serling. I have always loved Rod Serling. Rod Serling, man. And here's some things I want to tell you a little bit about the guy. That's what we all know him for. We all know him as the dude with the cigarette at the beginning of every Twilight Zone episode. That ominous man whose every word carried a certain gravity and seriousness, even if he were cracking a knock-knock joke. He had that way about him. But he was one of the early television pioneers, and he was a guy who was all about pushing the envelope. Why? Because he understood the power of the medium, right? And he looked at this enormous. I've told people this about people that do psychedelics just for the visuals, right? That's kind of like having a magic fortune-telling mirror with all the powers that come with a magic fortune-telling mirror and using it to shave. Will it work for that? Absolutely. Are you getting the most out of it? Not even close. Television was a very powerful medium, particularly in the 50s and 60s, man. It was the up and coming thing. Everybody had their glowing box in the house. Now, granted, it had some very, very sinister applications as well. But Serling was no stranger to that either because he was an astute student of history, right? You know him from the Twilight Zone. Here's some things that you might not know about him. He actually was a paratrooper. He served with the 511th Parachute Infantry Regiment, stationed in Georgia, 11th Airborne Division. He took up boxing in the service. Yeah, that skinny dude apparently had a lot of reach. He had 17 total bouts. Rose to the position of second in the flyweight division in that particular division inside the military. He was a skilled boxer. The dude could scrap. But he got knocked out in his last bout. He fought a couple of Golden Gloves bouts, decided that boxing wasn't his thing, and we're all better for it. He got sent to California in 1944. He figured he was going to be going to the Pacific Theater. Now, because, and again, the irony is not lost on me, because Rod Serling comes from a Jewish family, he was actually looking forward to taking the fight to Funny Mustache Guy over there. By the time he got actually assigned, there was nothing going on but in the Pacific Theater, and he finished he finished his assistance to the military doing that. He got out of the army, was discharged in 1946. He took on a family, got into radio, and that's when he first started seeing the potential power of the medium and how it could be misused and how it was being misused. He was always one for pushing the envelope, and the guy. It's fascinating what he did, and again, I'll leave it to y'all to delve into that rabbit hole. But what I want to offer you here, while I have your attention, is some quotable moments from Rod Serling. And you guys know I have a bevy of quote memes, but it hit me just the number of quote memes that I have just from Rod Serling, the width and breadth of his expertise and the things that he had to offer as far as social commentary for a guy who's just known for being a television producer. Um, it has been forever thus. So long as men write what they think, then all of the other freedoms, all of them, may remain intact. And it is then that writing becomes a weapon of truth, an article of what? An article of faith, and an act of what? An act of courage. Ponder that for a minute, man. Ponder the enormity of just that quotable moment. He was progressive without being woke. He had no illusions about the nature of tyranny across the board. He did not use his social conscience as a cudgel and a bludgeon, nor did he use his power as a television producer as a cudgel or a bludgeon to push a particular ideology. Let's look at the modern political climate. We can all pretty much agree that bigotry is a bad thing, right? That hating somebody that you have no experience with is generally a bad thing, right? We can all universally agree that governments lying to their people is a bad thing. We can make these statements without politicizing it. We can make these statements without qualification, but it's okay when we do it. Sterling didn't do that. He played it right down the middle. And it was fascinating watching this guy because a lot of his opinions went against the cultural norms of the time. If survival calls for the bearing of arms, bear them you must. But the most important part of the challenge is for you to find another means that does not come with the killing of your fellow man. Wow. You mean to tell me that we can all actually seek peace and to live in cultural harmony, even with those who oppose us? We can do that while still retaining the right to defend ourselves once we've identified an enemy who is bent on our destruction? Yeah, be kidding me. No way. Every man is put on earth, and this was actually from one of his Twilight Zone bits. Every man is put on earth condemned to die. Time and method of execution unknown. How many of you guys sound off in the comments? Sound off in the comments if you guys are fans of the Twilight Zone, the old Twilight Zone, not this abortion of a reboot. Fans of the old school Twilight Zone. In fact, if you're really a fan of some old school Twilight Zone, give me the name of your favorite episode over in the guy. I would say mine. It's pretty tight. It comes down to either the shelter, which I think is pretty much my favorite, but I'm also sort of given to the Monsters to Do on Maple Street. If you guys are fans, feel free to sound off over there in the comments. But here was his statement. Here was his statement. Let me find the right quote. What do we have to do now? We have to bury the history, right? Isn't that what the Hollywood left tell us? Listen to what Serling had to say about it. All the Dachau's must remain standing. The Dachau's, the Belsons, the Buchenwalds, the Auschwitzes. Keep in mind, Serling was what? Tiny Hat Tribe. You got it. All the Dachau's must remain standing. The Dachau's, the Belsons, the Buchenwalds, the Auschwitzes, all of them. They must remain standing because they are a monument to a moment in time when some men decided to turn the earth into a graveyard. Into it, they shoveled all of their reason, their logic, and their knowledge. We let that go, we become the grave diggers. Wow. That's not very woke, is it? Not very woke. He finished an interview, and you guys should look that up. He did an interview with Mike Wallace. I have it downloaded to my iPod. You guys can find it. And this was a closer. I will leave you with this thought. Don't stop talking. Don't stop thinking. And don't, for God's sake, stop arguing. No people, no race, no country, and no civilization ever died from too much talk or too much divided opinion. Wow. Have I given you a perspective on Serling and his political thought and his social thought that you might not have pondered before? The deeper you go down this rabbit hole, and there are whole books, biographies have been written on the man, been written on his career, and the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, you will find out that he not only spoke these principles, that he lived them. And in his production decisions and in his capacity as a television producer, he was able to put that good word out and use television as a stabilizing force. What about history? What about his perspective on history? What does the modern left say now? Authoritarianism is bad, except when our team's in control, and then it's A-OK. What does Serling have to say about that? Every superstate has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy, and the truth is a menace. What was the party's final, most important demand? That you reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. The truth is a menace. And the only way we can make sure that the truth doesn't become a menace is if we control people's perception, if we control people's reality, if we control the way truth is even viewed. That's not the modern left. That's a man who was a man of principle. That is a man who walked it like he talked it. And I'm sure we could dig through his historical record and find some skeletons in his closet. And the minute the woke cancel culture people saw that he wasn't part of their orthodoxy, I guarantee you they would start picking him apart. How do I know they would do it with Rod Serling? Because they did it with George Orwell. Two more that I'll give you right here. Two more that I'll give you. I'll close with these two right here. And like I said, I've got dozens. We're developing a new citizenry, one that will be very selective about cereals and automobiles, but won't be able to think. What did George Carlin have to say about that illusion of choice? What if any number of people had to say about that illusion of choice? Serling was a brilliant man. Some of you guys may have even been fans of Night Gallery. I can take or leave a lot of the Night Gallery stuff. I don't think it was his strongest work at all. But I'm going to leave you with this last quote. This gets back to fear, about walking in the light and walking without fear. You see, no shock, no engulfment, no tearing asunder. What you feared would come like an explosion is like a whisper. And what you thought was the end is the beginning. A little word for those of you out there who may be walking in fear, who may be walking in apprehension for whatever reason, who may be so consumed with trepidation. Another one of my three colleges, who might be so consumed with trepidation that even taking the next step forward seems like an insurmountable task. I'm going to tell you something. I know that my brothers of faith, I know that the Bratva who are here, I know that Doug, I know that Sonny, I know that Deacon Mark are looking at that. We don't fear. We don't fear. The prime directive is to walk in truth and to walk in the light of truth. But what is the one phrase that gets repeated 365 times in the scripture, verbatim? Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. In that moment, should it come, if it comes peacefully in my sleep, I won't even notice. If it comes as an act of violence, I will be so caught up in the functions of the violence of that moment. If I have taken Brother Sonny's training to heart, I will be in the zone, consumed with the mechanisms of the violence in that moment, and will not notice that suddenly the synapses aren't firing anymore. And then I will meet the Lord. What was he used to say when we were out on the live fire range, Sonny? What was it? You have nothing to worry about until it becomes dark and quiet. Once it becomes dark and quiet, you have nothing to worry about. First time I heard you say that was 2011, Sonny, and it has stayed with me every moment since then. But that last, oh yes, time enough at last, Joel. Time enough at last. I remember. To Serve Man, also good. The Hunt, also good. Yeah, I got a lot of. Look at this, man. I got a lot of Serling fans over here running it back. Condemnation, private investigation, higher form of ignorance. I agree. I agree. I agree. Sister Emmy, Deacon Mark is a fan. I'm not shocked. Fan of the old ones. Rod, yes. What do we got? To Serve Man. Yep, that would be two. Brother Doug brought up The Hunt. Also good. Very, very good. Time Enough at Last. The one with Burgess Meredith. That's a classic. That one's a classic, for its twist ending. That one's definitely a classic. It wasn't a real message carrier. The ones that really spoke to me out of the old school Twilight Zones are the ones that like really, really carried a message where you could see yourself or some manifestation of current culture in the message it was trying to send. Monsters Who Do on Maple Street carried that off brilliantly. How you can get people to lose trust in each other and get them to turn on each other just by creating a little bit of suspicion based on what? Based on the F word, fear, right? The Shelter, same thing. Um, the Shelter still speaks to me because of what? Wait, The Last Flight, also good. Not familiar with much of his work. You know what, Sonny? That is a situation that we must rectify quickly. In fact, if you remind me, I have a couple of videos that I need to send you with regard to something earlier that we spoke about small clips and things like that I need to send you. I can also send you some recommendations on some old Twilight Zone episodes. Um, and I think once you catch into the groove, there are guys out there who are X Files fans who like I'm a super hardcore X Files fan, but the Monster of the Week episodes a lot of times are just dumb, right? The Fluke Man episode, dumb. Some of the other Monster of the Week episodes, just dumb. But the mythology episodes are something that you can get caught up in. Twilight Zone is kind of like that to a degree. Some of the ones that were just one offs and here's your creepy little twist ending for the week were not so good. The ones that were well executed and put together and carried the message, really, really good stuff. And if you start off with those, you're gonna have a positive appreciation of Serling's work. But you're also going to be able to differentiate the ones where he was just kind of phoning it in. He's like, some weeks he was like, I have a message that I want to make as part of the culture dialogue this week. Always with that perpetual cigarette. 2 packs a day, I think. 2 packs are better a day. But always with that cigarette. I have a message that I want to convey to the cultural dialogue. And then there are other weeks where he's just like, I'm on vacation and I don't want to be disturbed at my beachfront property. I'm going to give them a creepy little twist. And yeah, and you guys can judge my Rod Serling impression all I want. I do a pretty mean Sonny Puzikis too, but I'm not gonna do that when I know that I'm not gonna do that when someday soon I may be on the receiving end of some deep strikes. So so I'm not gonna risk it, at least not this week. But yeah, Rod Serling. I I put this out because I wanted you guys to understand his thoughts and his philosophy behind his work before you took a deeper dive into his work. But once you take a deep dive into his work, and when you actually do the really, really deep dive into the things that he had to overcome to be able to bring this cutting edge programming. Think about the programming in the 50s and 60s was lowest common denominator stuff just to sell product, right? He saw the power of the medium. He wanted to take it further, and they fought him every step of the way. Mr. and Mrs. Mainstream America aren't going to be able to get their heads around all this deep intellectual stuff, Mr. Serling. You can take your little Jew ass packing, brother. We don't have time for that. Actually, no, they wouldn't have said that at all because it's Hollywood, and the Hat tribe controlled that. So that wasn't actually what they would have said to him. But the part of actually, they probably would have phrased it. The Goy are too dumb to understand what you're putting down, Rod. We're not going to do it. He fought it. He fought an uphill battle, and he had some victories. He had some victory. Oh yeah, yeah. I heard about the Russian whip massage. Oh yeah, Jude gave me a total breakdown on that. Brother. You already know. You already know. Pain is a recreational pursuit. You know, I will bear it. I will bear it if only for the experience. I look forward to it. I look forward to it. And I understand that by vocalizing that and verbalizing it and putting it out here in a public forum, I have subjected myself to the worst of the worst. And it will be the weekend for once where Clem and Jude aren't the designated crash dummy and I get to bear the weight of it. That is a cross that I'm willing to bear, my brother. So I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, guys, that is your rabbit hole. Rod Serling. Rod Serling. Start with the basic search and then get into some of those quotes that I laid down and then get into the man's life. Start doing some research, particularly on his time in Hollywood and all of the things that he had to overcome, whether it was cultural prejudice or whether it was a Hollywood entertainment industry that thought we all were too dumb to get what he was laying down and how he defied all of those standards and carried it forward. And the next week, we're going to do part 2 of the program. You see how much time I spent just on Rod Serling? That's why I decided to split it into 2, because next week, we get into everyone's favorite redhead. Oh, yeah, you didn't see that one coming. Yeah, it's a 2-part rabbit hole. So, part 1, Rod Serling, and next week, we're going to do a deep dive on some sides of America's favorite redhead that you may not have been aware of previously. So, that is your rabbit hole for the week, Rod Serling, and I'm looking forward to it because you guys know how I am about redheads, man. I am a dedicated ginger chaser. I cannot help myself. And me to you, man, do a Google image search. Lucille Ball, when she wasn't deliberately trying to be goofy, that woman was freaking hot. Hot, dude. Oh my goodness. Whew. Whew, my goodness. I've yet to take the time with the whip as well. Well, Bill, looks like me and you on the firing line, brother. Looks like me and you on the firing line. And I could not be happier to hear it. All right, guys. I got off the beaten path. I got off the bullet points. Even in my opener, let that go ahead and set the mark of the pattern. Before we get into bullet point number 1, there is something that popped up that I wanted to discuss about something that is going on up in Idaho. And I want to discuss it because it is close to home, but it also directly relates to a lot of the things that we've gone over on this program, not the least of which is the enormity and the intensity and the reach, the tentacular reach, a college word, 3 of those, the tentacular reach of the deep state. It's in Idaho. You know that's a potato growing region. You know, famous potatoes, I think is the motto on the state's license plate. It is the potato growing region of the country. I know it for 100 other wonderful things that make Idaho the magical place that it is, but the rest of the world knows it for potato farms. It's not just potatoes; they grow a lot. They grow a lot of vegetables up there. They grow a lot of produce up in Idaho. And a couple of weeks back, a directive came down from, I want to use the Orwellian term, from the Ministry of Water Consumption, because that's basically what it amounted to. It's shameful what they did, but they cut off water supply from 500,000 acres of farmland in the state of Idaho because allegedly we had a shortage, which would have been fine if we had legitimately had a shortage, particularly in a wildfire prone region. If you've got a shortage of water, I can understand curtailing the amount that is going to farms because you have to have a certain number set aside to be able to fight fires and whatnot. I can see it, but that wasn't the case. And somebody did some very basic homework and figured out that the state of Idaho, in fact, had a surplus. So why are you cutting off water to the farms? Well, it's lower than we needed it to be, and we want to make sure that, and it turns out none of that was true. Here's the thing. Some of you may be hearing about it for the first time right now as I'm speaking. Some of you aren't even, yes, they do grow, they famously grow peckerwoods up there. I think it's the state tree is the peckerwood. Anyway, freaking Joel. Did you see how tall that thing was? It was like this freaking tall. Anyway, They cut off the water to 500,000 acres of farmland. MSNBC didn't talk about it. NPR didn't talk about it. ABC, CBS, NBC, except for the local affiliates, they didn't talk about it. Of course not, because here's what was actually going on. Cobalt. You guys familiar with it? Yeah. It's a metal that is necessary to making batteries for EVs and any number of other consumer products. And we basically gave away, thank you, Bill, thank you. Cobalt mine, you got it. And it's one of those precious metals that we had plenty of access to when we were still in Afghanistan, like lithium that we had plenty of access to when we were still in Afghanistan. And for some reason, we abandoned not only Afghanistan and gave it back to the Taliban, but as it's coming out, we left Bagram airfield. And in fact, and I'm not going any further with that until I can put some nails into this one. But some facts have come to the surface where there are pretty good indications that the Bagram airfield was actually sold to the Chinese. Sold to the Chinese. Afghanistan is the Saudi Arabia of lithium and cobalt. Now that we have abandoned that to the Chinese overlords with our compromised cadaver in chief president, we need to fire up the cobalt mines for domestic production because we've all got to be driving EVs by 2030. Don't you know? It's the only way to save the planet. So those 500,000 acres of farmland, growing something a little more important for the survival of a population, like food, they cut that off because of the cobalt mines. All of the water, and this is something that I'm finding out. I knew that mines used a lot of water. It wasn't until this contract that I'm working right now, because I'm in the bottom of a very deep pit mine. That's where I've been for the last 2 months out here in Nevada. I'm running a crane at the bottom of a pit mine. I had no idea how much water is utilized for these mining operations. It's a lot. So those 500,000 acres of farmland where the ministry basically came and told these farmers, you can't use your water. Sorry, we're under shortage and we'll fine you X amount of dollars a day for every acre that you water. Guess who came in right after that? Before the order. Now, I should give you the happy ending. The happy ending is this week the order was rescinded and these farmers are able to, but that only happened because of the outcry on social media. That's the only reason it happened. Mainstream media didn't talk about it. And for the educated classes, who gives a damn about that bunch of Idaho potato farmers? Oh my God, with their dirty hands and their racist attitudes. Oh my God, who cares? I don't care if they starve. I don't even eat potatoes. That's like totally, yeah, I'm a vegan, but potatoes are like gross and racist because that's how they all sound to me. Nobody knew and nobody cared. But because of the outcry on social media. I bring this up for a number of reasons. Let me finish my sentence. Let me finish my sentiment, rather. The people that showed up immediately after the order went through and a whole lot of farmers were trying to figure out how they get out without losing money. You already know who showed up making offers on the property. BlackRock, all these other holding companies, some directly tied to Bill Gates, started showing up and making offers on property. And these people presented screenshots. These farmers presented screenshots. This is not crazy tinfoil hat anything. They basically told them, look, dude, we're going to fine you right out of existence. But at the same time, that water that we were so short of got diverted and all those allowances were made for the cobalt mines. Do you know how this was done? Do you know how this was slipped past the American public? Under the auspices of a bill that provided, are you ready for it? Drum roll, please, boys and girls. Military aid for Ukraine. That's how the feds and the EPA authorized this thing, working in tandem with their equivalent in Idaho. Under a bill for military aid for Ukraine, they gave the go-ahead for this plan to cut off water to farmers and redivert it to a cobalt mine. The system is entirely weaponized against us. Let me say that again, full stop. The system is weaponized against us. I had an interesting back and forth with a person whose intellect I do respect earlier today with regard to certain other things that we're going to be touching on next in the program. But their concern was about the perception. Their concern was about the perception. How is it going to be perceived if we address these people and call it what it is? The perception doesn't matter anymore. The judgment is a foregone conclusion. For as much as I push people to vote, I am not naive. We have a lot to overcome. The weaponization of the system has been readily evident in the way that they have shafted Darth Cheeto over these fake ass criminal convictions and all the things that have been presented. The same Alvin Bragg who went after Trump with both barrels on completely specious charges that are 100% certain to be overturned on appeal, and all the malfeasance that took place in that the media paid no. That same Alvin Bragg let four savages, four illegals, I'm not going to play your word games, let four illegals who beat up a cop in broad daylight, let them loose on personal recognizance bonds. At which point the feds, who are supposed to be enforcing immigration law in the first place, put them on a bus and sent them to California. Didn't even deport them. Because technically, they're still due for an immigration hearing 4 years from now. So we can't just send them home. Refugees. Helpless. Maggots. Animals. Savages. And I don't care how I am perceived for saying so, and I don't care what the public perception is of the people that would say so, because anyone who hasn't clicked to it now is not going to. Don't be thick. Don't be dense, as if the perception, that is how we got to this point in the first place. They were fighting, and we went in and we decided we were going to try to play fair. It's over. With regard to Idaho, all of those things. Idaho is the wrong place. Let me just say this. Idaho is the wrong place to try something like that, because had they carried forward with it, there would have been armed resistance. And I'm not saying that thumping my chest like one of these F around and find out people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I know the people of Idaho. I'm saying I know the farmers of Idaho. I'm saying I know the respect or lack thereof that they have for these sinister usurpations, college word, for these sinister usurpations of power by agents of the federal government. The entire system is weaponized. The time for nice and for talking and for playing the word games is over. The time for denying that things are anything what they are, anything other than what they are, is over. No more. No more. This was as naked as it gets. We're trying to seize your farmland by hook or by crook. We'll make it uncomfortable and try to coax you into selling it. At the very end, we will just cut off your water. They're doing it in the state of Oregon right now as well. You guys should do a deep dive on that. When you seek to control the food, you are seeking to control the people. There is no other explanation for what they're doing. You can say we need this water more for the cobalt mines because we screwed ourselves out of an ocean of cobalt under Afghanistan and the Chinese own it now. You can say that, but don't tell me there's a good reason for cutting off water to the farm. You give the water to the mines and you let the farmers take the water that they need, because feeding the people is the most important concern. If the people aren't there, who's going to drive your damned electric vehicles? This is about control. Call it whatever you want. I'm not engaging and I'm not debating anymore. These are facts. Ignore them at your own peril. Take a look at what happened in Idaho and then ask yourself why you're just now hearing about it. I put a couple of good posts up, but you can find them anywhere. One thing I just want to touch on really, really quick that illustrates it, and it further encapsulates the problem as it stands. You can find the video. I posted it to the fan page. Sex predator. And of course, he's a non. Of course, you want to play guess the complexion? You want to play guess the ethnicity? And he's there in this public park in Portland to meet a 14-year-old girl for sex. That's what he showed up for. It was a sting operation. And the guy's recording him on camera, and he's berating the dude. He's like, you want to talk about why you're here? You want to talk about why you're here? And some Stasi Karen, Pollyanna, walks up in the middle of this thing, and she's like, excuse me, but I live in this neighborhood, and dude, I am quoting, I am not making this up, the video is there, go look at it. I live in this neighborhood, and I am here to make sure that this brown person is not being accosted. We have to take a stand against white supremacy. And the guy asked her, he's like, hey, you want to tell her why you're here, dude? You want to tell her why you're here? No, I don't want to say it. The guy tells her, this guy came here to meet a 14-year-old girl for sex. He was a hell of a lot nicer than I would have been with that Pollyanna. I wouldn't have physically engaged, but she would have known damn well better than to step in the middle of that ever again. But there you have the problem. If you ask the same white liberal woman how she felt about grown men taking advantage of young girls and sexual exploitation and pedophilia and all of these things, oh, she would have had plenty to say about misogyny and patriarchy and men sexually victimizing women and how it's terrible. Rape culture, hashtag rape culture, that would have been on the tip of her tongue. But the minute it's a brown person and an immigrant, everything changes. That's not logic. That's emotion. That's not rational thinking. That's deliberate cognitive dissonance. Because every one of those things that she said might have been true in her own head, but if they were true in her own head, they should be true across the board. All men? Oh, no, just white straight men. Oh, okay. All young girls? Oh, well, I mean, all young girls, I mean, except for the ones who were victimized by marginalized, historically oppressed people. For all your virtue signaling, are you principled or are you not? Now, I know Bone is out there thinking to himself, and as I've said before, you can make a case for this. That's pretty good grounds for for repealing suffrage. You could say that's hateful, misogynistic patriarchy talking, but don't say he can't make a case for it. Because if this is how your moral compass works, your decision-making capabilities are, by definition, suspect. You stand for X or you do not. Men are categorically a threat to women or they are not. It is bad for adult men to sexually exploit young women or it is not. We must be able to speak the truth about historically oppressed and marginalized peoples, or we must not. Which leads me to the next topic that I wanted to get into and the next bullet point. And guys, I went over a lot of this in the opener, and a lot of this is just a rehash because you've already heard it. But I did want to post this with the 6. Rachel Moran, Molly Tibbetts, Elizabeth Medina, Kate Steinle, Sarah Root, and of course, Laken Riley. Every single one of these women were raped and murdered. And these are just the most high-profile cases. The same week The poor Jocelyn was strangled and murdered by two, was strangled, raped, and murdered by two animals down in Houston. There was another case just like it in Queens and another one just like it in San Francisco, and at least two others that I was able to find with a cursory 9-second Google search. It literally happens every day. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. For all of you with those Pollyanna delicate sensibilities, I understand on on the basis of humanity and compassion and the better angels of our nature and all these things, how you would want for families who are coming here for a better life to be accepted. Let me let you in on a little something, Pollyanna. That isn't the standard anymore. That is the ultra rare, if not completely non existent, exception to the rule. If what you have chosen to believe against all evidence is that these are families looking to improve their life, I totally understand why you feel the way that you do about the border. I totally understand why you feel the way that you do about the people who you think are coming across. The fundamental problem with that is that you are categorically ODP, hashtag ODP. You down with ODP? Yeah, you know me. Objectively, demonstrably, provably, factually wrong. Abjectly and categorically incorrect in your assessment. And you are advocating for policies and protocols that play to your misconception rather than the reality of the boots on the ground. The people who are coming across the border now are not families. They are not children who are separated from their parents. They are trafficking victims. Something that I was told that y'all were very, very seriously concerned about. No one is separating children from their families and putting them in cages. These NGOs with these innocuous names like Catholic Charities and that sort of thing, do some homework. Fellow by the name of Boz Basil. I'm gonna throw some of his work out next week. And his lovely wife, who I was able to meet at my church back in Spokane. Same weekend that General Flynn was there. 2-day exposition, and I went over that. How much that viscerally affected me. I had to leave the room at one point to vomit when they were telling me about some of the things that were going on with the traffic. The border situation is not what you think. These are not families and children being separated. These are not hardworking men who are persecuted in their home countries coming here looking for the American dream. That is no longer the case. Hasn't been for a long time. And we continue to leave it wide open. Why? Is it incompetence? Come on, guys, you know better. It's not incompetence. This is by design. Now, we can speculate on what is or is not true about the end goal with that. I have my own theories about it, but we're not going into theories. What I'm dealing with right now is facts. And the fact of the matter is that those people who are coming across are single males of military age, physically fit, that somehow found the money and the resources to make it from Nicaragua and El Salvador, Guatemala, all the way through Mexico to the American border, even though they were too poor to afford to live. That's why they're coming here, see? They're too poor to live in their own countries, and yet they somehow found the resources to get from where they were all the way to the southern United States border. Are you retarded? Or more likely, are you just so committed to your faith and what is good and right about men and what brother should do for his fellow man, and so inculcated in that ideology that you simply refuse at this point to even entertain the possibility that you could be wrong, that you could have been lied to, that you could have been manipulated, that every source that you have chosen to trust is compromised and part of the problem. Or are you secretly just harboring the will to tell me that I should just go ahead and put on my tinfoil hat like Alex Jones? At some point, we have to call the problem what it is. The chickens are coming home to roost. All of these NGOs have laid the groundwork for this invasion. And it is, let me say it categorically and without equivocation, it is an invasion. Do you realize that in several sectors along the California and Arizona border, for the last 3 months straight, they are encountering more Chinese immigrants than they are Mexicans? Still think that it's just people coming here for a better life? Oh, it's people coming all the way from China for a better life. Is that going to be your case now? Okay, cool. I'll play along for a minute. Let me ask you something. Just based on what we know about China, is that the kind of place where if you're not digging life over there, you can just pick up and leave? Hmm? Unlike us, they have some of the tightest border controls in the world. If you leave without the blessings of the state and that communist government, you are killed summarily and unceremoniously right where you stand. You're crossing the border under cover of night because you don't want to be under Chinese communism anymore. You vanish on the spot. And yet, thousands, thousands of, again, single military age Chinese men not only managed to get across that border and outside of China, but managed to make it all the way across the Pacific into Mexico to hop our southern border. And you don't think that this is all orchestrated? You legitimately are going to lean on good people looking for a better life? You're legitimately going to lean on that? Are you thick or are you willfully blind? It's okay to admit that you were misinformed. It's okay to admit that these things that you held as core beliefs were completely in error. I won't judge you for that. I changed my whole religion recently. So no, I'm not going to judge. But at some point we have to acknowledge it. And this is the way, again, getting back to the bullet points. Murderous migrant chickens coming home to roost and NewSpeak in real time. MSNBC. You guys can find this video online. This man is talking about the two Venezuelan subhuman animal predatory maggot miscreant scumbags. Oh, I'm sorry. Undocumented predatory miscreant maggot rapist murdering scumbags. Um, because you can't call them illegal. Both of these hosts on MSNBC, the guy was speaking truth. He's like, wait. No. You can't say that. We don't use the word illegal here. Talking about two people who they concede, both the hosts concede that they took this little girl, this little 12-year-old girl, tied her up, raped her, choked her to death, strangled her to death, threw her body in a river. But don't you call them illegal. They're undocumented. What do you know about Orwell and NewSpeak? Two things about NewSpeak. Ultimately, what was the goal of NewSpeak? What did O'Brien say to Winston at the ministry? What did he say? That the goal of NewSpeak is to render thought crime impossible because there's no words with which to express it. That's the game about controlling language. The other game about NewSpeak is to be able to paint things in a certain light when they are anything but. When you think undocumented, it sounds a lot more sedate than illegal. doesn't it? Even though illegal is factually correct and undocumented is factually correct, one paints one picture and one paints the other. As long as we keep people talking in terms like, well, they're undocumented, they are able to continue and persist in their errant belief that these are just families looking for a better life, that these are children being viciously separated from their parents. The children that are coming across, your Department of Homeland Security managed to lose 30,000 of them. If you knew what I have been informed of with regard to human trafficking, do you want to know what happened to those 30,000 kids? And you think you're being virtuous by believing in the good nature of these people coming across? Lord God, remove the scales from their eyes. These are children. They're being raped. They're being murdered. And meanwhile, our news whores are telling us that we can't even use harsh language, not even obscenities. Yeah, you can take issue with me calling miscreants and maggots and scumbags and savages, right? You can take issue with that. I understand it's very inflammatory language. It's inflammatory for a reason. But to take issue with the use of the word illegal? Are you kidding me? Better yet, to take issue with the use of the word illegal because it may affect the nature of their prosecution. That's interesting. My simple two-word response to that would be, what prosecution? Those four cops, those four maggots those four undocumented that beat up that cop in New York City were released on PR bonds, and then the feds who were supposed to deport them just gave him a bus ticket to California. The guy was seen coming out of the courthouse giving the double barrel family friendly. This isn't anecdotal. Look at the numbers yourself. These kinds of things are happening daily, every single day. So we need to accept some realities, and those realities are these people, without exception, are culturally no longer compatible with the West and with the United States of America and the Western cultural standard. No longer compatible at all. The ones that are going through the legal process, and God bless them. God bless them, and we should streamline that project. We should streamline that process and make it possible for the best of the best, based on merit, to come across. If you're an entrepreneur, you got a skill set, I don't mind bringing you in within reason. As long as you're not displacing U.S. workers, I have no issue with that whatsoever. If you're of above average intellect, if you're of at least 100 IQ minimum, at least 100 IQ, don't have a problem with it. No family history of violent criminality, no warrants for your arrest, no outstanding murder convictions. I have no problem with that. Anchor babies, get them gone. Them and everybody that looks like them. Do you want to know why they put that fencing up around the Supreme Court building this week? Because the Supreme Court, guess what? And isn't it funny? You remember how they leaked the Roe v. Wade decision in the Dobbs case? Remember how they leaked that? Guess what got leaked? This week they handed down a decision that illegal immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens, have no right to stay. Supreme Court decided that this week. You know what came out a day before they made that decision? Biden's executive order saying that they were going to let that happen. Somebody leaked. Sotomayor. Well, let's just go ahead and call it what it is. That freaking diversity maggot. Look, and when I call her a diversity hire, I'm speaking factually, okay? She was a diversity appointment. The fact of the matter is, she did not make the required scores to get her into law school. She was accepted into law school because of a DEI initiative before it was called a DEI initiative, to make a racial quota. That's the only reason she was accepted to law school. Her scores on the bar did not meet the standard. Why was she allowed to pass the bar? You guessed it, the D word. So when I refer to her as the diversity hire on the court, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, who somehow couldn't identify what a woman was because she wasn't a biologist, well, you know what? You're not a chemical specialist either, but if I give you a glass of water and a glass of bleach, you know which one's going to kill you, right? Got it. Don't say I'm being harsh. I'm speaking facts. These facts may bother you because they jack with your narrative, but they are facts nonetheless. Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sonia Sotomayor are diversity appointments. They are not qualified to be practicing lawyers, let alone members of the Supreme Court, but they're there. This week, they handed down a decision, and that decision got leaked to the Biden regime. Biden came out with that executive order in advance, 1 day in advance of that decision. Why? Because it was leaked. What a coincidence that he would come on with an executive order saying if you've got an illegal and she's married to a U.S. citizen, we're obligated to make her stay, when he knew that the Supreme Court was going to release a decision in opposition to that the very next day. Why would that happen? Because it was leaked. It's not just here. It's in Europe as well. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. That's not a Muslim immigrant on top of a Catholic church in London tearing down a cross. And even if it is, it's just an isolated incident. There's good and bad in all people. I mean, there's going to be. Should we crunch the numbers? I want you to Google this. Churches burned in Canada. Churches burned in Canada. 33 Canadian churches were burned to the ground since May of 2021. 2 of those were ruled accidental. Of course, this follows a fake story that got put out in the Canadian press. You know, Trudeau falling all over himself to pacify the noble savages and apologize for all these massacres and mass graves of young Native American children that actually, as it turns out, never existed. And all over Canada, Christian and Catholic churches started burning. 33 burned to the ground. 33 burned to the ground since May of 2021. And only 2 of those were ruled accidental. But while you're on that while you're on that search term, comes another question: how many churches burn every year? And this is across the board in North America. 1,300 church fires. 1,300 church fires are reported each year, causing $38 million in property loss. Yeah, but I mean, those things are going to happen, right? I mean, those are just like isolated incidents. I mean, like 1,300 isolated incidents and 33 of them in Canada alone. And like only 2 of them are accidental, but it's just isolated. It's not a pattern. Then just below that, another question: what is the most common cause for a church fire? Arson. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. It was the party's desperate, most essential, final, and most essential command. Reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. This isn't happening. We're not being invaded by migrants who are hostile to the very structure of Western civilization. We aren't in Europe and in Canada, particularly in Europe. No, diversity is our strength. There's another one. Diversity is our strength. Ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. Does diversity look like strength to the people of London right now, when they are literally marching in support of Hamas, a terrorist organization who, as part of their manifesto, swears the violent end of Western civilization? Is diversity working out as their strength? How about over here in the United States? What percentage of the population committing what percent of all the violent crime? How's diversity working out for us over here? How about all these new refugees, these migrants that are coming in? That, I mean, how is that working out? How is that working out for all of us? And again, you can hide behind it's not happening. It's happening. ODP. You can hide behind. It's a rare event and it's just the occasional thing and it's just a few bad apples. You can hide behind that, but it's a daily occurrence. And statistically, the criminality level is abhorrent. But you know what else it is? ODP. Objectively, demonstrably, provably the truth. Don't care enough about the West to preserve it. You care more about being morally right in the face of humanitarian crises than protecting the very civilization that gives you the luxury of even holding that opinion. You need to do some serious soul searching. Very serious soul searching. And I'm going to leave you with this. You've heard me say it before, that the way that tyrannies fall, one little conversation at a time. Yeah, it's true. We're all the little 6-year-old that had the guts to step out of the crowd and go, Emperor's wearing no clothes. Lawfare is not working, and I'm not going to belabor this point because I know everybody's got feelings on Darth Cheeto and everybody's either positive or negative, and I really don't care which. It doesn't matter to me at this point. It's immaterial. But the one thing that I am compelled to discuss is this. The lawfare against him has not worked. His polls continue to go up. The indictments have not worked. His polls continue to go up. The convictions haven't worked. His polls continue to hold steady. His percentage of black and Hispanic voters are off the charts compared to where they were just 4 years ago because people fundamentally are suckers for the truth. I mean, people that have the courage to call the truth what it is. What is left? What do they have left? Lawfare hasn't worked. Massive fines haven't worked. Criminal convictions haven't worked. Their desperate attempts at media propaganda have not worked. What do they have left? He's going to win the election. The fraud that they would have to pull off at this point would make 2020 look like a scout camp, and it would be patently obvious to anyone but the willfully blind. He's going to win the election. What is the only thing they have left to keep him out of the Oval Office? And this is just a random thought, by the way. It's total speculation, and it's something that I pray to God never happens. But what is the only means they have left to them? They have to take him out. They got to kill him, right? Here's the thing. If he is assassinated, if he were to take a bullet, no matter what the circumstances were, no matter what the media tried to frame up the guy, no matter how the media would try to Oswald the guy. Well, actually, he was a Trump supporter, but he just had a change of heart and decided to put a bullet in the man because he thought, trying to save democracy, and he's just a one guy acting alone. Or, Trump kind of had it coming, encouraging this kind of violent rhetoric. We know how it would play out, but it would be too obvious, wouldn't it? If they take him out with a bullet, everybody's going to call it what it is. They're not going to have any choice but to call it what it is, no matter how the media tries to Oswald it. Let me ask you something. When I talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, when I talk about DEI and how it's affecting companies, how it's affecting, industries, companies, what is the first company that you think of? What is the first company you think of when I think DEI causing quality control problems that are a threat to public safety? What's the first company that you think of? I'll help you out. Those of you who are waiting to make the comment over here, I'll help you out. When I talk to you about aviation companies, thank you, Jake. Thank you. Yeah, you didn't even need for me to give you the hint. Boeing. When I talk about aviation companies and all of the media focus on their planes having problems and sudden blowouts and quality control problems and repair issues and spare parts being delivered that are incomplete or not up to quality control standards that are causing catastrophic failures of their aircraft. Who do you think of? Who do you think of? Think of Boeing, right? Who is the manufacturer of Donald Trump's entire airline fleet? All of the Trump planes that you see flying him into the airports for these rallies, who is the manufacturer? Boeing. Boeing is the manufacturer of every single one of Donald Trump's aircraft. This one nearly got past me. You know, I say that tyrannies fall one conversation at a time. I was in the middle of one of those conversations. This one nearly got past me. Everything that we hear about, every plane that fails, Boeing, Boeing, Boeing. Every quality control problem, Boeing, Boeing, Boeing. If you're going to take out the orange man, you can't do it with a bullet or it's going to set off a civil war. You have to make it look like a legitimate accident. How did they handle that overseas? You guys remember a fellow by the name of Prigozhin? Evgeny Prigozhin? Anybody remember? Wagner Group had a little disagreement with Papa Vlad. How did he die? Of all the ways that he could have died, being in the line of work that he was in, of all the people that had personal vendettas against the man, of all the guns and savage skill sets that he was surrounded with, any number of people who, at the drop of a hat, could have ended his life by way of terminal ballistics. How was Evgeny Prigozhin? I'm sorry. How did he meet his unfortunate and completely accidental end? Plane crash. Thank you, Bill, Ronnie, and President. That was actually a helicopter, but yeah. Yeah. Plane crash. Yep. Thank you, Roman. You know what's up. Point worth pondering. Again, that's one of those. I want to be abundantly clear. This is pure speculation. This is something that just came up and we kicked the ball around, but it's something worth thinking about. They have no choice but to clip the man. They have no choice. Nothing else is going to stop them. The latest polls say that it's within spitting distance. What they are trying to do there are trying to get it to where a 2020 level fraud will still carry the day. That's not going to happen because the real numbers, we all know. We all know the real numbers, but again, what are we told? We know the real numbers. We know the people we talk to. We know the people that we don't talk to. We know the polls that we keep seeing. We know the numbers that they keep putting in front of us. But the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. This goes against all things at some point. And I meant to, this is the one bullet point that I didn't get to cover about the nature of experts. And we're gonna do a deep dive on that next week. We are consistently told to trust the experts. We are consistently told to trust our betters. You know, the experts, the subject matter experts, the ones who know more about the world than we know about the world. Which academically may be true. They're able to regurgitate facts better than anything else. But they don't determine someone's critical thinking skills. And here's the thing about every one of those experts. They all have an agenda that they're trying to drive home. Every single one of them. I have an agenda as well. We've discussed that at length on this program before. I have my biases. What I don't do is try to tell you that I don't have my biases. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't lie to you and say that I'm being 100% objective about subjects that I'm passionate about. There's no way that I'm going to tell you that I am being 100% objective when it comes to the border crisis when I lost one of my closest friends to a fentanyl overdose. But at the end of the day, we do have to pay attention to our own eyes and ears. We can see what is going on right in front of us. And for those of you out there who are reluctant for whatever reason, because of the long history you have with your ideology or the intensity and depth with which you hold your belief in the better angels of our nature or the overall goodness of people, at some point, if you are intellectually honest, you are compelled to call something what it is. You are compelled to look at the evidence, and you are compelled to reject the party's final, most important directive to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. And I'll tell you how seriously I feel about it. That's the biggest part of the thing that brought me back to the cross. Because for as much as I wanted to dismiss the idea of spiritual warfare being a real thing, for as much as I wanted to not take into full account the chasm of difference between good and evil and how evil had overcome and how evil was being used to manipulate and control, and the depth to which the evil ran in these people who were the experts and the leaders and the authorities, and not want to look at, because of my own emotional ties to members of certain demographic communities, I wanted to push back and say, okay, yeah, well, this, but not that. I finally had to admit to myself that the walls that I had chosen to put up to protect myself from taking an objective look at the truth were in error. I had to have the courage of humility, for lack of a better term. I had to have the courage to say, you know what? I've been wrong. I've been wrong, and I've been so convinced of my rightness that I have taken jabs at things about which I knew nothing. Now, in my defense, my brothers in faith out there will confess that I never made it a point to go out of my way to slag Christianity. I would take the easy jabs, I would take the easy jokes, but I really, really thought that I knew where I stood with regard to the moral fabric of the world, with regard to the moral fabric and the moral structure of everything that was going on around me. I really, really was convinced of my rightness. And then I had to have the courage of humility. Why? Because, son, you ain't been punked till you've been punked by the Nazarene. That's why. And when the Nazarene calls you out for a coward, when the Nazarene calls you out, son, you better jump. You better jump, you better hit your knees, and you better find some humility, because guess what? You've been wrong. And it is only by his grace that you are even continuing to live. This is a bit of a stretch, but again, I'm just trying to be a vessel right now. But I feel that way about the West in a lot of ways with these people. You only have the luxury of holding these misguided, misinformed opinions by virtue of the civilization that has protected you. I am only alive by virtue of the grace that has saved me not only from my sins, but from myself. How am I going to look at that and be ungrateful? How are you going to look at the West and say existence here is intolerable when you haven't even contemplated the alternative? Am I saying you shouldn't call things out for being wrong when they're wrong? That is not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that you better have the humility to admit that you could have been wrong, to admit that you are counting on the very thing that you reject. And when the Nazarene came for me and called me out, I had to have that humility because I damn sure didn't have the courage. Nazarene called me out for a coward. Carpenter called me out for a coward, son. And I had nothing to respond to that. No amount of rooting myself in some misguided belief was going to save me from the power of that moment. No amount of clinging on to an ideology which has long since outlived its usefulness and was not rooted in truth was going to keep me clinging to the old way. Some of y'all got some soul searching to do. It is only by his grace that moment came to me under a set of circumstances where I was not vulnerable and my life was not on the line. My soul might have been, but my life was not on the line in that moment. If that moment would have come to me and my life would have been on the line, who knows how badly I might have failed that test. I pray that your moment of epiphany and your moment of conviction and your moment of being compelled to come to the truth will not be the moment where everything that you hold dear is at stake. Your own life, your children, everything that you have worked for, everyone close to you, the people that you love and the people that love you. I pray that when your moment of truth comes, that everything that you hold dear will not be what's at stake if you fail. Because I promise you that moment of truth is coming for every single one of us. So you go on and choose to follow the party and reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. You go on and do that. But if you won't come to the truth, and I swear this on the carpenter as my savior, I swear this on the boss man as my creator, if you will not come to the truth, by God, will come for you. And I pray that when it does, your devotion to the lie can slip at least for a minute, because it may be the last conscious thought that goes through your mind before you meet your maker and you stand tall before the man. I am the Reverend, and that is the gospel. Oh, feeling it, man. It's all coming together. Y'all feel that moment, man. You guys that were there, Bill, Bone, Sonny, you guys that were there with me in that moment when it came for me. Thank God. Thank God. Literally give thanks to God that my life was not on the line in that moment, because I was so committed to my own pride and my own misguided sense of surety and pride that I couldn't have possibly been wrong. I see you, Clem. I know. Breathe. Clem, you were there. Thank God. Literally give thanks to God that everything wasn't riding on the line in that moment, because I was committed. I was committed to that pride. I was committed to my own misconceptions. I couldn't have possibly been wrong. Carpenter had other ideas. The truth is going to come for every one of y'all. Truth is going to come for every one of y'all. My admonition is that you hit your knees, do some serious soul searching. Whether you walk in the faith or not, do some serious soul searching. Entertain the possibility that every idea that you were committed to could have been entirely wrong and based on misinformation and misconception. If you don't have the courage to do that, ain't nothing I can do to help you. I'm going to close with a prayer. Lord God, I ask that you give every one of us within the sound of my voice the courage to examine everything, whether they are walking in the faith, or especially if they are not walking in the faith, whether they are looking for truth or whether they are avoiding the truth that is right there in front of them. Lord, I ask you to just give them a moment of courage, a moment of humility, where they entertain the possibility and maybe they lock right back into their misconceived notions, and that's entirely possible. It's far too common in this world these days, Lord. But just that moment, Lord, that small window where you remove the scales from their eyes, let them see the truth as it stands right there in front of you. I thank you so much for your grace and your mercy that you did that with me when it was the last thing I deserved. Separate the sins from the sinners, Lord, but I was a tier 1 sinner. Tier 1 sinner, Lord. I did not deserve the grace of that moment where you gave me the choice. I ask that you give us all that choice. I ask that you give us all that moment, that we can entertain that in humility and in truth, and not reject the evidence of our own eyes and ears. And Lord, I know that you know our hearts and you know the will of the deceiver. The deceiver uses our own eyes and ears against us by playing on those emotions, by playing on those heartstrings, by leading us astray, Lord. So as always, clarity and discernment in all things. I pray that every one of us here has a chance to come to the truth. If they're not walking in it now, they have a chance to come to the truth before the truth comes for them when it could cost them everything, Lord. I pray that you give them some insight, even if it comes in the form of a nightmare, even if it comes in the form of a near miss that will shake them up and make them re-examine it, compel them to re-examine it so they understand what is at stake, Lord. Because those of us who read your word and those of us who follow your truth and walk in the light of your truth know what's at stake in this world and the next. I pray that you would give us all that moment of clarity, Lord. But moreover, the courage to walk in strength and face that moment and face the truth no matter what it costs us. Let it be the hill that we are willing to die on, because our souls are going to meet you, Lord, and the salvation of those souls will pay through the blood of your Son, scourged, tortured, and murdered on that cross, that we might have life and have it abundantly, Lord. That's the hill that we all should be willing to die on, and a cross that we all should be willing to bear. Give us the courage and the strength to lay down our burden and pick up that cross, Lord. I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, the risen Christ, my Lord, my Savior, my Master, whom I ever serve. Omnia ad regnum, everything for the kingdom, Lord. Amen. I'm not kidding, y'all. I wish it for y'all. I wish for y'all to have that moment of clarity. I wish for y'all to have that truth. I wish y'all to have, for as tense as I seem right now, there's a calmness in that resolve. There is a peace behind that, because I don't have anything to fear anymore, man. I don't have anything to fear anymore. And I will face your ridicule, and I will face your slings and arrows, and I will face your derision, and I will face your slagging, and I will face your beatings, and I will step up and be a martyr if that's what we are called to do, Bill, as we have had that discussion. If that's what it's called to be, if it's called to be a fight, then let me go out fighting boldly. If they're going to sneak thief and take me in my sleep, okay, that'd be their best way out. But if it comes for me just to stand silent and be a martyr, and the last word that crosses my lips is praise God, no matter what, I'll face any of it, man. I'll face any of it. Bar, what are you afraid of, man? Nothing. That's the beauty of it. I'm not afraid of anything. I can call things what they are without holding any hate in my heart. I can hold hostility. I work on that. Carpenter admonishes us to avoid wrath, but this isn't wrath based in pride, man. Big distinction. Y'all need to make that distinction. This isn't wrath based in pride. This is wrath based in observation of evil doing harm to good. Oh, it's easy to hide behind that ideology. All right, we'll look into it then, Sparky. Do some reading. You don't need to share my opinion. I don't need you. I don't need you to feel the way that I do about it. I don't need you to fall down on your knees and confess Christ. I don't need it. I don't need any of that. That's between you and the boss man, brother. That's between you and the boss man. And I pray when you stand before him, and you will, that you'll be able to find it with a clear conscience. One last thing I want to leave you with, too, man. Just things that have been boiling up in my head that I want to make sure I share before I get off of here. I think about this in terms of self-defense and combatives. Any of you people out there that have trained with me, any of you out there that have been through my classes or seen videos of my classes that I do, and what do I always tell my students? I always tell you in terms of self-defense, particularly on a street level, don't just think about the event. Think about, can I sell this to a jury? I think about somebody like Dennis, right? Even better, Roman. Even better, Roman's a better example here. I'm thinking about people who don't come off immediately as intimidating. And that's no slag on Roman. Let me tell you something about Roman, man. That little sawed off mutt has got a skill set. You know, I say that in the most respectful, loving way. That little sawed off mutt has got a skill set. He has got a Brazilian jiu-jitsu skill set and a Filipino martial arts skill set that is enviable. Okay? But you wouldn't know that from looking at the man. So let's talk about what I always say. It's what you can sell to a jury, right? The bar for Roman to stand in front of a jury of 12 peers and say, I was in legitimate fear for my life. You look at the guy, you look at his physical stature, you don't know his background. He's not a loud, imposing, belligerent guy like some of us I could name. The bar for him being able to sell that statement to a jury is pretty low, right? I was in fear for my life. There were two of them. They threatened to kill me. I was in fear for my life. You put that in front of a jury coming from somebody who looks like Roman and them not knowing his skill sets, he going to be able to sell that. I want you to picture me in front of that same jury at 12. There were three of them. Nobody presented a weapon, but they verbally said they were going to kill me and made some threats against my continued existence. I was in fear for my life. Do you think a jury's going to buy that? Right. I want you to think about matters of the spirit in that same context. When you are pondering major decisions that have to do with your moral compass and the way that you live your life and the example that you set for others, I want you to ponder that. Because the jury that you're going to stand in front of is not going to be 12, it's going to be one, technically three. You guys that walk in the faith, you feel me? You're going to be standing in front of a jury of three, manifesting as one. You are going to stand tall before the boss man. And here's the beauty of it. Can you make that case? Would you put that in front of, would you put your case in front of that jury? And I'll go you one better. A jury of 12 angry men don't know your heart. The boss man does. You can lie to a jury of 12 men. You can try lying to the boss man, but he knows your heart, son. So ponder the full implications of every single thing that you do and every action, particularly ones that are dependent on that moral compass, and define who you are morally. I don't care what a jury or even a nation of men in the world think about how I choose to live my life or the hills that I'm willing to die on. I give two flying at six rolling donuts how a world full of men feel about that. I worry about, can I make this case in front of the boss man? Can I make this case in front of that jury of three? Father, Son, and Spirit. And if I can't make that case in front of that jury of three and I continue in those aberrant behaviors, I'm the one that needs to do some serious soul searching. I want all of y'all to ponder that. See how it resonates in your own life. Find some areas in your life where you might be wanting. Re-examine those and do your best to dial it in and be a better vessel for His will and His word going forward. That's all I got for y'all. I thank y'all for being here. I thank God for letting the Spirit speak through me tonight. I hope that I've been successful in my aim, which is to pull scales from eyes and to touch hearts and open minds and bring souls home. Moments coming, folks. Moments coming. It's already here. I don't worry about what's going to go on in this world. I can get upset about things that are going on in this world. I get spun out of control about things that are going on in this world because I hate seeing the innocent suffer at the hands of the wicked. I hate seeing beauty suffer at the hands of evil. I hate seeing otherwise intelligent people not being able to call evil what it is. I can get spun up about the things in the world, but ultimately, things in the world, that ain't my wheelhouse, son. I do whatever I have to here to fight that fight as I am being commanded by the boss man and the carpenter. I do whatever I have to. I don't care what any hundred of y'all think about that because I don't have to make the case in front of you. I had to make the case in front of the boss man. And I feel like I am at peace with being able to make that case. And anytime I find myself wanting in that department, it is a step that I take to correct it. A better vessel for his will and his word. Examine your own lives, people. Examine your own lives. I can't make the decision for you, just like I can't judge you. But constantly re-examine yourself. I had been wrong before. I got convicted in my heart and I was wrong. And I had to step up and admit I was wrong. Guess what? I can be misled again. And I'm gonna have the courage have the courage to do it all over again. Eyes on the Lord. Eyes on the Lord, man. Eyes on the boss man, eyes on the carpenter. Boss man got the plan, carpenter's got your back. But you gotta give them their proper respect. You gotta give them what they are due for the grace that they bestowed upon you. They are the only reason you are still here. No matter how you might deceive yourself out of believing that, they're the only reason you made it this far, son. Show them some damn respect. Live the purposes they have for you. And if you don't think they have a purpose for you, I'm going to refer you again to Saul of Tarsus. Because when he entered heaven, he entered to the cheers of every man, woman, and child that he murdered. That's how big this plan is. And that's how beautiful that love is, man. I pray that y'all find it. Every single one of y'all, whether you're walking in the faith or not. I pray that y'all find it. We're going to go out like we always do. A little Fortunate Son from Clutch. Our outro music. I'm going to pass that digital collection plate around, man. If anything I did helped anybody out, made anybody think different, come to some realizations, man. I'm on PayPal, I'm on Cash App, I'm on Venmo, I'm on Facebook Pay. Just go pass that collection plate around. If you all want to kick down some coin, that's cool. I also am not naive. I understand that reluctantly we are still living in a Biden economy for the moment. And it could get a hell of a lot worse before it gets better. So if you ain't able to kick down, it's cool, guys. I'm working right now. So it's cool. It's a labor of love. If you want to kick down, you can. If you can't, here's what you can do. Spread the word, man. Post the video, post the replay. Tell some friends about it. Fat, toothless, crippled, crane operator with some opinions. He gets on and rants and raves for a couple hours every Sunday. I think you'll dig what he's laying down. Spread the word, man. Get that gospel out there. All my sinner sisters, all my reverends, rangers, all my OG prophets and doom out there, spread the word. But here's what you can do. First and foremost, not just for me, but for yourselves, and primarily for yourselves, man. I want you to ponder this. Stone, what do we do, baby? Stone, what do we do? We live the what? We live the three. We live the three. What is live the three? Live the three. What is he talking about? I'm talking about the three prime directives, baby. Reverend Bart's three prime directives. Directive number one, signal the noise. They will try to bury you with the noise. They'll try to obscure your whole outlook with the noise. You have got to be the signal that punches through that noise. You got to be the message that punches through that fog of war. Signal through the noise. Signal in a world full of noise. You have got to be the light in a world full of darkness. They will try to bury you with the darkness. We say it all the time. They will try to demoralize, dehumanize, emasculate you with the darkness, make you think that there was nothing in this world but darkness. You have got to be the light to carry through the darkness and to punch through that light, punch that light through the darkness and bring it through to the other side. But that leads me to the third and final, the iron rule. And this is the iron rule for a reason, because without it, nothing else matters. You have got to be strength in a world full of weakness. The weakness of the world will try to hit you with toxic masculinity and how lifting is going to make you a right wing extremist, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Strength is everything. They abhor strength. Why? Because without strength, nothing else matters. It is the prime directive. Without strength, you will not be able to punch that signal through the noise. You will not have the endurance to carry that light through the darkness, nor the strength to punch that light through to the other side of the darkness. So strength above all. And I'm not just talking about here. This is important. This is important. But I'm talking about here, and even here. Carry that strength. And when you pray, strength, clarity, and discernment always. Get away from the treachery of the deceiver or his minions on earth that will try to deceive you. Be that strength. It'll carry you through in all things. God bless every single one of y'all for being here, man. I love y'all. I'll see you next Sunday. Until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Eyes on the prize. Boss man's got the plan. Carpenter's got your back. Believe it, and you will receive it. Knuckle up, people. Fight's coming. God bless y'all. I love you. See you next Sunday, folks.